Welcome to the Men After God podcast, where you will be challenged and encouraged as you pursue God, achieve success, and raise a thriving family. Join your host, Dustin, and his guests on a weekly journey to grow as husbands, fathers, and men after God. Here is your host, Dustin Alley.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Men After God podcast. We're excited to be here with you with my friend David, who works for a large tech company and is going to be providing us a lot of great insight as husbands, as fathers, and just as men that are followers of Jesus operating inside of a technological world. We're going to be talking about where we are, where we're going, and just how we can be men after God in this technological age. Before we jump in, I do want to remind you that we've got a book coming out soon called Becoming a Man After God. You can find more information about that on menaftergod.org and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/menaftergodpodcast and learn when that release date's coming out and be able to purchase that as soon as it does so that you can see this 10-chapter book with a 5-part framework that we teach through our coaching program. We've developed a Bible study around and that you can utilize to be a man after God that achieves success with a thriving faith and family. That book's coming out here soon, titled Becoming a Man After God. I'm looking forward to selling that to everyone and them being able to enjoy what God's done in my heart through it and what I know He's going to do in yours. But without further ado, let's get David on here and talk to him about his family and just what God's been doing in his life. David, thanks so much for being with us, man.
Hey, Dustin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, bro. So listen, I know you're traveling right now. You're away from home. Tell us about that family you got back home and just how they're doing.
Yeah, so I've been married for almost 21 years with 2 kids. My son, Davey, is 17 years old, getting ready to go to college in just a few months. And then my daughter is 13. And we all 4 of us serve in our local church, Calvary Baptist Church in New Braunfels, Texas, where I've been pastoring for 10 years.
Man, that is awesome. So have you been bivocational the entire time that you've been pastoring?
Yeah, I have. So it started with my dad, who pastored the church for 20 years, got cancer, and we were having a really hard time finding someone to come in to pastor the church. It was a smaller church and couldn't actually afford to pay a pastor. And so the church asked if I would step in the interim to pastor.
Long interim
To pastor. And I did that while working, and I've been doing it, for 10 years, actually. Yeah.
How do you, I want to talk about your family. Hang on. I got a question, but before we get to your family, because you just brought something up that I think would be great for our guys to hear. You really have 2 jobs that can require like full-time hours, right? And I'm sure there's some weeks where both do and probably more. What have you found? Let's talk similarities between corporate America and your job, the way you organize, the way you have to work. And the pastorate. Now, I know there's obvious differences. I'm curious if there's any similarities you might be able to point out.
Yeah, so I would say that they're complementary, and I say that as a pastor. In the corporate world, if you know how to speak and how to present what you're thinking, then you'll do very well, and you'll be able to do anything you want to do. And so I feel like that in pastoring, one of the greatest skill sets that a pastor can have, or any kind of like ministry leader, is being able to publicly speak, organize their thoughts, and being able to be relational. Those are really big things in the corporate world. In the corporate world, I think kind of is the reverse. So learning how to write, creating emails and running meetings and that sort of thing definitely translates over into the church world. I think that sometimes we have like a 1980s view of the corporate world where everyone is like super dressed up and everyone is cutthroat and, gossiping and things like that. And what I've learned over the years, just working in the kinds of environments that I've worked in, is that there is an unwritten moral code that I think is pretty impressive. Like there's no talking behind people's back, right? You only say good things about other people when they're not around. You only speak well of things, of people and of projects and of outcomes when you don't know, the entire reason why something happened. I think those kinds of things, surprise a lot of people because they do think that the corporate world is this kind of the movie version of what you would expect.
Yeah, we've all watched too many 90s movies of that.
Exactly.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so good. Yeah, you started talking about that, and it just made me think of, I'd love to hear that, because I know majority of the men who listen to this are not in ministry, and anytime we bring a pastor on, I'm always trying to help guys understand, like, hey, I think you have these rose-colored glasses, this different idea of what a pastor does. And yes, we preach. Yes, we pray. Yes, we teach. And but our lives and the organization administration we have to do, some of the things you just mentioned, we not talk behind someone's back, how to formulate an email. There's just so many similarities that I always want to help our guys connect to the pastors that are on here and understand that we're not different people. We have a calling on our life that might be different than yours, but being a man after God, it means there's no cookie cutter way to do it. And so, I love that, man. Thank you for sharing that. Let's jump back to your family for a bit. Now, did you say you and your wife have been together 21 years?
Yeah, 21 years. We met in college, went to a college in Western Florida, Christian college there. We met there, and she's from Illinois and I'm from Texas. And I say that she just married me just so she could live in Texas. So,
amen. Yes.
So if you live in Texas, it's always a good thing.
Absolutely. I'm up here in New England, and I have a number of reasons why Texas would sound good. But that's great. Oh, I love that. Okay. So 21 years ago, you meet in college, and then so the plan was ministry right after that, and then you ended up in corporate America, or what kind of transpired there after you graduated?
Yeah. So I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a person that can think on my feet. I don't like to stand in front of other people.
Probably should have given you a list of questions. Sorry about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like reasons why I would not be like the perfect fit for pastoring. So when I graduated, my goal was to simply help my dad. So my dad was pastoring. I wanted to be the second man to him. I wanted to help him with the administrative functions of the church, right? All the underlying things that keep the church moving. And that was something I was interested in doing. And that was something that I was completely fine doing. And then just getting a full-time job and supplementing. So, 20 years ago, I was setting up the sound system and I was painting walls, and it was just like a joy to me. Like I just wanted to serve. And I took the money, what little I had at that time, and bought things myself for the church. It was really, like, from my perspective, it wasn't that anyone had to tell me to do it. It's that I joyfully wanted to serve in my church community.
No, that makes sense. So you go back, you're helping your dad, and then did you start working in your present company at that time, or were you other places, then kind of moved that direction into more of the technological world?
Yeah, I think this is a really good thought, and I'll just kind of do a quick callback, because one thing I would really love for men, especially men in the corporate world, men that are successful, and women as well, to really consider how they can fit into ministry and how they can help the local church. From a pastoral perspective, the future, it will likely be bivocational for many pastors, and it certainly is today. And I think what we have today sometimes is that if a church has a need, then any bivocational pastor in the vicinity can fill it. But what I'd love to see is that as career-oriented men and who are Christian, to understand that they can serve in these capacities, and they can take all of their knowledge and skill set and apply it to a local church and see that church thrive, just based on the latent knowledge of what they've developed over the years in their corporate career.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I can tell you, again, from a pastor's perspective, to have a man from corporate America come in and say, hey, pastor, I want to help, to sit down and just have some conversations about things and bounce ideas off of even, is such a huge blessing. And then to, again, bring a skill set. Oh, wow. Yeah. What a blessing that would be. So thank you for calling back to that. And so now let's get back here. So you got into serving there with your dad. And then how did you end up in the technological field? Did that come from your Bible college you went to? Because I think you went to one that had more than just Bible degrees, but or was this something you pursued later? Yeah, so I've always been a techie, even in the 1980s. When I was very, very young, we had a PC Junior, and I was coding in BASIC. Oh, wow. In the 90s, I was coding in Pascal and C. And so it's always like, I've always liked to break things apart and put them back together and reverse engineer things. And so I've always been someone who
love to get in the weeds with technology and always spent a lot of money on technology. So so when I graduated, my degree was in pastoral ministry, and the reason for that is I was planning on going to law school. But from my perspective, I felt like a Bible degree would benefit me more in my core than any other kind of degree, because it would help me with my marriage, with my family, my personal walk. And I felt like no matter what I did after that, I would be able to be successful if I really became a student of the Bible. So I graduated and got into working as a business analyst. And then I traveled implementing Obamacare in New York, Arizona, Minnesota.
That must have been a fun time.
Yeah, it was. It was like there was nothing, like the government was throwing money at this big project and all the people were like marking everything up. Right.
Oh,
but
wow.
I realized like when I was having to travel to DC every week and not be with my family. And I noticed that the people around me, the consultants, were 50 years old and had done this their entire life. And I thought to myself, do I really want to travel my entire life and end up like these people? So
Yeah.
it just wasn't personally satisfying, right? I wanted to be with my kids. I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to be with my church family. Mm-hmm. So I've moved, I think I've had 4 different jobs. Every one of them, in my opinion, I feel that the Lord has led me into these different opportunities because of the skill sets that I developed as a pastor and because of those cross-functional skill sets that we've talked about. So think about this. I'm working at a very large IT high-tech company, and I have a Bible degree. Now, I did go to Liberty and I got my MBA, but still, I have a bachelor's degree from a college that no one knows about. And that I think is only the Lord that does those sorts of things. I'm pretty certain I'm the only pastor that works at this company of 75,000 people.
I would be interested to know if there's more. That would be a study that's a study we need to put out there and find out. I love that. Oh man. Okay. So 4 different jobs. You've gotten to the tech field, you got out of the traveling, and now what you're working on. Talk a little bit about what you're working on and kind of where we're going to take the conversation today. As much as you can.
Yeah. So, like I said, I've always bought the newest gadgets and the next technologies. And so now I'm working at a company where I get to work on the bleeding edge of Web 3.0. What does the future look like? And how does technology integrate into our lives? And how should it integrate into our lives? What are the opportunities and drawbacks of AI and of social platforms that are inside of things like the metaverse and that sort of thing? So it's fun for me because I get to be on the edge with incredibly smart people who are inventing new things to do some pretty cool, there's some pretty cool opportunities, I think, coming up for the church through some of these new technologies. Yeah.
What are some opportunities over the last 5-10 years that you think the church hasn't taken advantage of, but needs to?
Yeah, I think that social media, it has been historically something we've laughed at or said it's, it's for gossip or it's for things that are not productive. But I see that there are many church leaders that have really embraced technology in social media and they've used it to its fullest extent. I think that churches would be wise to set up their websites so that there's, for instance, a Facebook Messenger integration so that people can chat directly with the church. I think that YouTube, for better or for worse, no matter how you look, you should try to do your best on YouTube and try to have a camera that best reflects kind of your culture. But inevitably, that's the front door to your church, and people will watch you first, and they'll forgive you before they actually show up in person.
Yeah. And that's those areas where I know, again, as a pastor, I would love for people to come in and say, hey, I'd like to help you with your website, with your social media, with your YouTube and your live video streaming and stuff. How can I be a part of that? Definitely a way, you mentioned guys in corporate America and just really men in general get involved in serving, and especially if you're a tech guy. Like the tech room, the AV field in churches is just a really cool place to be, because your pastor is probably just going to give you free reign as long as it's not terrible and you just get to play. And so, I know I've got a sound guy, and he does a great job, and he actually helps us out with our Men After God podcast. And I give him just free reign, like just make it so it's not terrible, and we'll take it, because for me to put the time into it, whew, that's tough. So the church can take advantage of that, and as Christian men, we can help make those things happen. But now, what about going forward?
Yeah, and we can kind of approach this from like a ministry perspective, but also like from a personal perspective, as we talk about men being husbands and being fathers. There are a couple big things that are coming down the pike, and I think everyone's pretty well aware of, like AI and just the amazing technological advances in just the past year and a half around AI. And probably all of us have maybe at one point or another tried it. And if we haven't, like you can easily go to bard.google.com and try it out. But AI is something that should be harnessed. And there's so many different ways in which it could be harnessed, just like asking questions that are just basic to your life. I think one of the things that as a man, I struggle with is asking questions from people who might think that I should have already known the answer, right?
Okay.
So, and I hope that other men maybe can relate to that, because as the dad, like sometimes you have gnawing questions in the back of your mind that you never get answered. And what I have found is that framing those in certain ways through like a chat GPT or any kind of large language model really gives some interesting insights that maybe I haven't thought through, and maybe some other men hadn't thought through. And I find it kind of neat. So this year I've developed a philosophy for 2024.
All right.
I've planned out where I think I'll be in the next 12 months. Where will I be as a dad, as a husband, in my career field, as a pastor? What is the end goal, or what is the end state? Where do I think I will be? And so I wrote it out in a narrative form, and I used a Bard to help me kind of clean up the language. And actually it recommended some things that I had never considered that would maybe help me arrive at the outcome that I'm actually pushing for.
That's awesome. Yeah, such wisdom there in just establishing the vision for your life. And I mean, a year, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, and then working towards it. And then you utilized AI there you said just clean it up. So if you're like me, like I need a spell checker, I need grammar. I write, my handwriting's like a kindergartner. And then if you read, like after I've typed something, I thank God for my assistant, because she tells me all the time, she's like, I can't believe you're going for a doctorate. You can't spell with anything. I'm like, listen, I can spell. It's just my fingers work faster than my mind when I'm typing. So, but I think it's really cool how you said the AI kind of helped, brought some ideas that you wouldn't have thought of, because I know I've used AI in a number of different ways. We've used it with our Men After God stuff. I've used it in research. And it's just got phenomenal capabilities. And we are in such the infant stages of what's capable. So you saw, can you share a little bit of maybe some insight that just an example for maybe some of the guys that's never interacted with AI before, some of the insight that it kind of tossed out to you that you took into consideration for your, I'm going to call it a life plan or your philosophy for 2024?
Yeah, I think so. So I have some pretty specific career goals that I want to try to hit, but I also want to try to balance that with my ministry. Yeah, and I think one of the, we talk about men who can be bivocational, who work in their local church. I think the difficulty is understanding what the right priority is. Is it God's work, or is it like feeding my family, and which is more important, right? And I think the balancing part of that is the difficult piece. And so my goals that I established, or my like the outcomes that I want to drive for this year were all around like trying to balance the two and trying to be successful at both of them. And the ChatGPT like gave me, I asked it questions about it too, but it gave me some ideas on how I might balance my life so that I can be successful in both. And they're actually good ideas. The thing is that I think all of us know what we should do. I think our problem is having the discipline to actually do it. But when it's spelled out, yeah,
absolutely. I'm sorry, David, you just hit the nail on the head with that one, man. I said something the other day preaching. I said, we all talk about the things we've got to do or the things we should do. Can you imagine how far along we would be in life if we did everything we thought of doing rather than just thinking about it? Man, that's so true. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was just such a great statement.
Yeah. And I think I think I'm reaching a point in my life where I understand that it's better to just do things and fail than to try to do things the first time well. And the company I work for has a philosophy of moving fast and break things. The idea is that you need to just put things out there and then fix them in real time. People will forgive you. You need to be able to forgive yourself. You need to not think that everyone has to think you're perfect and everything you produce is perfect. Just get it out there and then fix it in real time. And when you fix it out there versus incubating in your head, you're going to be more motivated to actually see it to completion and make it successful versus if it's just in your head, you would be passively addressing it.
This really explains, just painting with a broad brush in the technological world, the reason for so many patches coming out after we're getting, it's a new software system. It's a new this, new that. And by the way, a week later, here's the patch for that problem that we just kind of didn't fix. We were talking gaming a little bit. I remember growing up, you'd buy a game and that was the game.
Right.
That was it. If there was anything else, they made a second game and you bought it. Now you buy a game, there's DLC for the next 5 to 10 years and they're always adding to. And so, but you're right. I love what you said there. Being willing to fail and fail publicly. We often fear criticism, and I don't think that we acknowledge it much. And that's something that you have to work through as you fail publicly and fix it. There is forgiveness, but not everyone's forgiven. I mean, there's a reason why we laugh on the internet and have trolls and all these things. It's, people can be just cruel and mean. And so we have to be willing to take the criticism as we push forward. Because I read a great quote the other day. It said that no one ahead of you is criticizing you. It's usually people that are not doing what you're doing or seeking to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And so they're just bringing you down to their level as you push forward. So in life and technology, it sounds like a great philosophy.
Yeah, criticism. I think that because of the pervasiveness of social media, we've realized that everybody has a voice and everybody has a position that will be contrary to the leader who made the decision. So maybe gone are the days where we think that we can actually lead with precision, where there will be no negative consequences or people not liking what we do. I think we've seen now today that there will always be opinions on why you should have done it differently. But if you're the leader and you're taking the steps, like if it's your family and your kids and you're raising your children a certain way, you'll get criticism from your own mind because it's more difficult than just being a passive parent. You're going to get criticism from maybe your family. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility, and you have to lead in that. A leader is never moving in a direction where he has gone in the past. Like this is new stuff for everyone, and you're never going to be a parent at your age ever again. So we all are all kind of trying as we go along. So I think being really bold and being able to process criticism in a healthy way, taking the feedback and allowing it to trim your direction a bit without it drastically altering your direction or without it scaring you is pretty important.
I love that, David. That was phenomenal. And so That segment right there, guys, if you're listening, or I know you all are listening, just rewind that back, take some notes. That was huge for you as a father, as a husband, as a corporate man, as a guy, business owner, if you're an employee, all those things that were just said right there, moving forward, taking criticism, processing it, and not being perfect. I tell people all the time, when I make a decision as a leader, there are three groups of people. They're the people who love me for it, the people who hate me for it, and the people who just do not care what's happening. And then I'm going to make another decision, and I'm going to have the same three groups of people, except now some of the people that loved me hate me, some people that hate me love me, and some people that don't care do care, and some of those that do care don't care. It's really just a vicious cycle. And what I've come to terms with is saying, when I lay my head down at night, I can go to God and say, God, I did it for you. I did what I believe you called me to do. And everyone else can either like it or lump it. And I know it sounds callous, but honestly, we're called to love God and hate others. And so it's just something to consider there. I love that. So you mentioned kind of the gaming space. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about that in depth in our Patreon only, subscriber only segment that we're going to do. But right now, let's kind of touch base on that. And as much as you can, describe where you see some of the gaming world going and some things that fathers and husbands need to be conscientious of when it comes to that with their kids.
Yeah. So what we're seeing now are kids that are being basically raised with devices, and they interact with people through their devices, and they have more friends on their devices than they do in real life. So I know that there's probably tons of men that have an issue with that, and I like to maybe speak from that frame of reference first. That we're biological creatures, and we have a need for social interaction, and it is not wrong for a dad or a mom or anyone to take devices away from their kids or to heavily restrict the access on their devices in order to take care of them. And I will say, the engineers that I work with, when they're raising their kids, the amount of lockdown that they have on their children's devices, these are not Christians, all right?
Yeah.
These are high-tech people. The amount of lockdowns and things that they have on their children's devices would probably surprise a lot of Christian parents. I say that because I think some Christian parents think, oh, it's because of where I'm coming from. I'm this conservative Christian. Maybe I need to be a little bit more open and let them have a little bit more access to things. If the people inside the tech world are locking down their kids' devices, then we should be pretty certain that we need to do the same thing.
That is so good. I don't know the truth behind what I'm about to say. Let's call it just the rumor and lore of the internet. But my understanding of Steve Jobs is that either his kids did not or had very limited access to the technology he's responsible for creating: iPod, iPad, iPhone. And I don't know about Bill Gates' kids. I heard the same thing. But I think I probably heard it in a message. And as a pastor, sometimes you hear messages and you're like, I want to see the source behind that fact. It could be true, but I'm not sure. So anyways, but no, I think that's great. Parents do not need to feel bad for restricting their kids' technology. In fact, I probably let mine have more than I should, but it's less than what I see in some others. I'm still surprised, and no judgment, I guess, but I do disagree with the thought that a 12-year-old needs an iPhone. And some will say, well, all their friends have one. Well, okay, if their friends jumped off a bridge, would they do it too? Do we really have to go back to that far? And then this concept of, well, it's how I get in touch with them. Listen, you ever heard of a track phone? They could still get a flip phone. In fact, I think we could find the Nokia and play some green screen Snake. Let's really take it back. But it's for the purpose. It's not even. I know for us as Christians, as followers of Jesus, our source of why we do things is from our faith. But truly, if we weren't even people of faith, you just said it, that they're doing these things to protect, to raise their children well, and to help them have social skills and interact in the real world. And I have a friend named Kevin Parker who writes in the parenting space, and one of the things he said is, I want my kids, they can consume content and consume things. However, I don't want them to be consumers. I want them to be creators, because it's creators that change the world. And so really pushing for that in our kids' lives is good, which can happen through gaming and some of the different things out there. I mean, your access to electronics at an early age helped you with coding and get you to where you are. But the access you had then compared to what a kid can have now on a tablet is so much different.
Yeah. And if you think about the emotions that young people and teenagers are going through too, we were not made to be omniscient and omnipresent. And when we give our kids unrestricted access to a device, they have the ability to know to feel and emote for things that they have no control over. And that can impact them mentally, that can impact their emotions. It can create new paths of habits in their mind, in the way in which they view society or the way in which they view their life, that will carry over with them to adulthood. So it's okay for them not to be omniscient and omnipresent. It's okay for them to just know a small amount of things going on.
Yeah. And what you just said, I think, is a leading cause of anxiety, depression, and fear amongst adults today. As an older millennial born in '87, I find myself, around people, and I've dealt with anxiety and depression before in my own life. But what you were just saying there, a lot of that comes from the unknown, and we have this fear of the unknown because we're becoming so accustomed to believing we know everything about what's going on around us. And when we don't know how to operate inside of that fear. But that's where our faith comes in, because the Bible says God's not given us a spirit of fear. And so we have to operate from faith that he's sovereign and in control. Even of the metaverse, he's in control. All right.
Absolutely. And you think that the Lord's given us these emotions and given our kids these emotions of empathy and of excitement and of all of these range of emotions that are ways in which they can express their own thoughts and who they are. But when a child feels as if they have the responsibility to emote for everyone's post, or they feel like there's the responsibility that other people have to make them feel better by liking or hearting their post.
Oh my goodness.
It creates a strange dynamic that I think numbs children to their own emotions.
David, this conversation could go on forever. I'm loving it because it's so important, because I've worked with teenagers. I started working with youth. My youngest class was 4th grade. And gosh, this was in 2000, trying to think back, maybe 13, 12. When did I deploy? Deployed in 13. So 2013, 2014 timeframe, 4th grade. And I was able and blessed to be with these kids until maybe a year or two before they graduated high school, and God moved us on up here. But watching them develop, watching them play on games, and they really had the access to social media and things early. The most gaming I had access to around the clock was my Game Boy with Pokemon, which is not nowhere near as that. But what you're talking about of just feeling as though other people have to make them happy, man. When we lose our sense of self and our identity in Christ, we're really trying to draw it from others. And I call it a gateway drug. Social media, likes, hearts, comments, is definitely an easy way that we can get our kids going into that. And so, but David, social media is not going away, right? There's no way that's happening. What is some counsel or advice you might give to a dad out there, and even a husband as he navigates his marriage, when it comes to social media and having conversations with his family about this, and ways to best use, and then ways that we should avoid?
Yeah, you're right. Social media is not going away. I think it's better for us to train our kids how to interact on it versus having them completely avoid it. And there's ways to do that. And there's the inoculation of, maybe one social media app that's just, they can only be friends with their family members, their direct family members, not the drama aunt, right? No. Just a place where they can share, their pictures for their day, and they can see great grandma says something nice about it. I think that's a really great way to, have kids socially interact with people within their family unit. but it's not going away. In fact, it's only going to increase and get more difficult. And so we have to figure out, how do we maintain personal biological relationships with people in our community, but how do we also maintain relationships and build community through social media? So there's I think we're going to talk about like the future of social media maybe a little later, but I think that in terms of like guardrails, like I'm still learning this stuff too. Like there are best practices. Like I think of my son who's 17, and I think back and I'm like, I probably shouldn't have done this thing. Let him have access to, Minecraft or something like that, where it's connected and people can talk back and forth. There's always you're always going to second guess, because I think all of us are trying to manage first times for our kids.
Yeah.
When is the first time they'll be exposed to somebody that's a bully? When is the first time they'll be exposed to pornography? When is the first time our kids will be exposed to? And we're trying to manage that. Like we know it will inevitably happen. We're trying to push it as far out in their teen years as possible. And so I think from like a social media perspective, it's just trying to be really super wary and looking for ways to allow them to grow in a very healthy way on social media. I don't know if that answers your question, but there's a lot of different ways that we can go with that.
Oh, absolutely. Let me follow it up with this. Are there conversations you had with your kids in this vein of their interactions on there? And then if not, I mean, hey, again, we're not just navigating first times for our kids, we're navigating first times for us in a lot of ways. And, is there a conversation you had or you wish you would have had with your kid at maybe, 12 to 14 years old?
Yeah. So my son is, he's a thinker, he's introspective, and he's not going to be on social media, like just typing all kinds of things. And one of the things that I appreciated about him, and I highly value just in his character, is that he had access to Facebook. And even on Facebook, like you can go to Marketplace and you can see things that are not appropriate, right? There are different. If you want it, you'll find it.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can't lock everything down, right? Nor can you even know. So, he came to me. He had Facebook, and he said that he felt convicted. He was probably 14. That he's doing things. He's seeing things that are feeding his mind, and he doesn't want to do that. And so he voluntarily locked himself out of Facebook. He did the same thing with Instagram. And so I think the one big thing that all of us struggle with social media is the addictive behavior of social media. Yeah. And if you can help your kids teach them to understand what addictive behavior looks like in themselves, then they'll be able to say, you know what, I feel this propensity to go and find these things. That's addictive behavior. What can I do to help guard myself on those things?
Wow, that is solid. Go ahead.
For my daughter, she's extremely extroverted, right? She's socially, like if I gave her all the social media apps, she'd be conversing on all of them with all kinds of people. So for her, it was, you have access to one social media app and you get to pick. And so she picked Instagram. The great thing about Instagram and Facebook and some of the others is that they have parental controls. And even your iPhone, like if there's a setting where if it detects that there's a naked picture being sent on instant messenger, it'll notify you, or receiving it, it'll notify you. Yeah. So I let her, you get to pick. And if you want another one, you have to close down this social media account and then use the other one. You don't get to just compound your social media presence.
She's not able to grow her following. Dad,
exactly.
You're keeping her from being an influencer. What are you doing?
Exactly. And I said, like all the people you want to interact with on Instagram or on Snapchat are also on Instagram. So why would you need Snapchat? So I think maybe kind of challenging the thoughts a bit, because that's good. Maybe some of that habitual addictive behavior of like getting in all of these apps and like talking to everybody in these different ways.
Yeah, and let's just talk about that from a developmental standpoint into either corporate America as a professional and an adult. One of the things Stephen Covey teaches, I believe it's Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If it's not him, it's in Getting Things Done. And I can't remember the guy who wrote that one, but both great books. And I think it's The Art of Getting Things Done. He mentions about limiting your inboxes. We get so much information from so many various places. He talks about limiting the amount of sources you actually get that from and consolidating it down. This goes back to us feeling as though like, well, I've got to have all the information at all the times so that I can say all the things and do all the stuff. And no, you don't. And in fact, you're going to be more successful in life and not just like, monetarily, just as a person, as a follower of Christ, by just, limit that. I mean, what is the common saying out there? Give me the what is it? Give me the faith to be able to. Oh, I can't remember, but it's about trying to take control of things that you can and only controlling the things that you can. Right? I think limiting those inboxes and those sources of information allow us to do that. And again, it starts. I think this is great, David. The Bible says, "Train up a child in the way they should go." It starts at an early age, just like what you're doing there.
Yeah, I think so. One point that you're making is really pretty important, and I think it applies to us as men as well, is that we think if we know everything, it empowers us to represent ourselves as thought leaders or as like we're able to relate to other people that are talking about these topics. But in the book, Good to Great, the companies that fail are the companies that try to be everything to everyone. Yep. And the book has the principle of being the hedgehog principle. Do one thing and do it well. And for some of us, maybe there's not a rainbow that you get to, there's not gold at the end of the rainbow that you get to capture where you know everything and you're able to like be authoritative in every topic. So perhaps maybe it's time to dial it back and be a specialist rather than a generalist, and try not to consume so much political stuff. Like you don't necessarily need to have all those conversations. There's a lot of these things that just drag us down that we really don't, it's not benefiting us day by day at all.
Not at all. Oh man, you go to the politics world. We're not going to get there today, but let me tell you, in 2020, I had to make the decision if I was going to allow that to continue to influence in my life, and I had to stop. All of my social media channels, and I say all of them, like I have a bunch. I have a Facebook and Instagram. I get on Instagram once a month. Facebook I'm on more often because I'm a millennial and that's what I do. TikTok I never jumped on. I still don't know if we're tweeting or Xing and Oing now, so I'm not even on that. But I had to remove all political candidates, channels, news sources, everything. I think Daily Wire. I may still get Daily Wire from time to time. And at the time of this recording, Ben Shapiro just released his latest rap album or his latest rap with Tom McDonald, which was hilarious. But nonetheless, no, those things just track us down. And again, it goes back to like, what do they bring up? They bring up they use the number one tool to attract attention: fear. And it's fear of things that we can't control. And I've told people in 2020, because I'm from the South and this happens, but I said, God's not called me to lead the rebellion. When God calls me to lead the rebellion, I'm going to go lead the rebellion. But until then, I'm preaching the gospel, which some could say is a little bit of rebellion, but that's a whole other story. David, I've loved this interview, man. We're hitting some of our time limit here. And so what I want to do, first off, I'd love to invite you into our Men After God group on Facebook if you want to be a part of that. And to you guys out there, we have our Facebook account, our Facebook page, facebook.com/Men After God podcast. But if you'd like to connect with myself, any of our guests, a guy like David here, and ask some questions on technology or how to navigate that, you can go to facebook.com/groups/Men After God, and we can connect with you in there. And we'd love to just share some of these insights. And again, don't think you're the only guy out there that's going through this. We're all trying to figure this thing out. And so make sure to avail yourself to those men that are in there and those group and that page. And David, if you want to share any last minute thoughts, or if you want to give any way to maybe reach out to you or something to be a blessing, you don't have to. But just kind of, what would you tell the guys as it comes to technology? Maybe number one thing that you think as Christian husbands and fathers they should be just keeping the forefront of thought as they love and lead their families.
Yeah, I think kind of in closing, it's important to step out of your own skin for just a brief amount of time and evaluate your own life, your trajectory, and where you feel like you're going to end up. And part of that is also like evaluating how much time is being wasted and whether or not you're investing in all the right things like your family and your kids. And so I think it's pretty important to maybe step out of your skin once a year at least and just evaluate life and create some goals, think through where you need to be, and then just execute with self-discipline on those things and see the Lord do great things through you.
David, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much. Guys, I'm just so grateful that you've chosen to listen in today, and we are going to go record our subscriber-only episode where if you would like to hear that and you're not a subscriber, you can go to patreon.com/menaftergod and sign up. We've got 3 brand new tiers, our silver, bronze, and gold packages ranging from $5 to $10 or $15, where you can get in. You get not only exclusive content. If you get our gold package, you get a couple coaching calls, you get 10% discount. Our silver package has a 5% discount on any of our products and the book that's coming out, and our coaching program that's going to be launching this year, which does exactly what David's talking about, helping you to identify who you are in Christ, what he's called you to do, and then how can you get there. And we cover that in about a 3-month program with 6 coaching calls with one of our 4 or 5 coaches. And we just really want to invest in you, because the more we invest into the men that are following Jesus, the more we're investing into the kingdom as a whole. And we want to raise up a generation of leaders that has generational impact for years to come. So thanks so much for listening, guys. If you're a Patreon subscriber, we're going to head over there, get that recorded, and you're going to enjoy that. And for everyone else, we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Men After God podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and keep up with the show by following us at facebook.com/menaftergod. You can also reach out to Dustin personally at dustin@seekconsulting.us with any questions or for coaching on being a man after God. Until next time.